Hey everyone, and welcome to the strawberry insert for our basket tutorial. You're going to need a pack of brushes, some glue. I prefer the Gorilla Super Glue, a couple different sponges. I like to use the makeup wedge sponges that I get from Dollar General. A paper plate will come in handy. And then we're going to use the colors chocolate, cotton, barn red, and evergreen. Got a cup of water and a couple different paint pens in various different thicknesses. First thing we're going to get started with is you're going to use your brush, and we're going to use some chocolate. We're going to use the chocolate on the background of the sign. I'm going to put a little bit of water on my brush. I want this paint to be a little bit see-through, give it more of a stained effect. Here I'm painting the background of the whole thing and the post. The more water you have in your paint, the more see-through the paint is going to become. So if you really want to see that wood grain, just add a little bit of water to your paint. Still adding some water to my chocolate, and I'm going to just paint right over top of that farm fresh strawberries. For this particular sign, we have letters that we're going to be attaching to the front of it. So don't worry about if you can't really see those lines. They're just guidelines when it comes time for assembly, so you know where the letters are supposed to go. Set that off to the side, and we're going to get started on our next project. Using a little bit of the cotton white, we're going to use that for the lettering. I find it's easiest to do the lettering with the sponge. That way you don't have to try to worry about all of the drips getting around the edges. Just dab your sponge into a little bit of the white paint and very gently dab up and down. Right onto the flowers and onto the lettering. I'm using a little bit of painter's tape with the two ends folded over so that the sticky side is up, just to hold down all of my little tiny pieces so they don't run away on me while I'm trying to paint them. So now I'm going to remove all of the pieces that I painted white to make room to put some of my stems and stuff back onto my tape, reuse my tape again. Next I'll be using the green. The green is going to be used for all of the stems for the strawberries, and then it's going to be used for the leaves in the background of the basket. Drying off my brush a little bit. I don't want a super wet brush for this. I want the green to be a little bit more of a darker green. If you want the leaf details to show more, then you'll add a little bit more water to your paint. That way the leaf details will show through. After painting a little bit with the brush, I decided I didn't really like how it was coming out, so I decided to switch back over to a sponge. And you're going to dab off of the excess paint and just sponge right over top of the leaves. And as you can see, my paintbrush is sitting off to the side with paint on it. Do not do that. Stick it in some water so that it doesn't get all crusty and gross, and then have to take forever to try to get the paint out of the bristles. Learn from my mistakes. Just dabbing some green over top of those leaves. You're going to want to go ahead and paint the whole entire thing green. There will be pieces that are going to peek through. with the strawberries on the front. So you're going to want to just paint everything green, not just the leaf details. Go ahead and paint that whole front edge green as well to be on the safe side so that there's no naked wood peeking through. As you can see, I'm lining up my strawberries and realizing that there's still wood peeking through, so I keep going back through, and I ended up just painting the whole thing green. Now that you have your sponge, it still has some green paint on it. You're going to dip just a small front edge of it into the white. Use your paper plate, and you're going to blend the two colors together. It doesn't matter that there's still green on your sponge for the white, because we're trying to make just a lighter green, not necessarily that we want the white, we're looking for the lighter green. You're going to use your sponge and you're going to put that onto the stems, putting the lighter color on the edge of the stems, just giving it some natural highlights. Dabbing straight up and down and going through and doing all of the stems in the same green on bottom with just it's a bit of a lighter green, not quite white, on top to give it some highlighting. Reapply paint to your sponge as needed, just dabbing in between so that it blends the colors together. Now that all of our green is done, we're going to go ahead and cut the end off of our sponge, giving ourselves a nice clean surface to work with for our next colors. Never dip your sponge in water to rinse it off. All that's going to do is make it soggy and make it so you can't use it again. Easiest way to switch between colors is to use a pair of scissors and just cut the end off. We're switching to the barn red now. The barn red is what we're going to use for the strawberries. And don't worry about if you go into the stem parts on the strawberries, because those will get covered with the stems that we just painted. The stems we just painted will get glued to the front of these strawberries. So it's okay if your red goes into the stems. So here you'll see that I'm going to move on and do the next step, but as you can see to the right there is one more strawberry that needs to be painted. But I didn't paint it, so learn from my mistakes again. I'm just going to add a little bit of white to the front edge of my sponge, just like we did with the green and white. Blending it to just make not quite a pinkish color, but it's not a true white either. And you're going to use that to just add some highlighting to the edges of your strawberries. Staying along the lines of each individual strawberry. You don't want it to blend into the strawberry next to it. That'll ruin the effect of your highlighting. You just want to make it look like each of the strawberries are individual, not just a big blob of strawberries. And it doesn't really matter which edge you choose to highlight. That's entirely up to you. I just kind of go whatever way I feel like going at the time. Going to add just a tiny bit more white to the front of my sponge. You don't want your sponge to get too dry. Once your sponge gets dry, then it starts getting like a speckly kind of effect on your paint. It's kind of more of a chunky look. Not quite what we're going for when we're doing our highlighting. Once we have all of our strawberries done, even that poor lone strawberry off to the side all by itself that got left behind, make sure you paint that one. I find that it's easiest to do the decoration for the seeds on the strawberries with a fine, extra fine tip black paint pen. You can always use a paintbrush if you have a smaller paintbrush and just use a tiny bit of dab of black paint, Or you can leave them natural too if you don't want to do the black seeds. I'm just going to be going through and painting in the black seeds, just so that they're a little bit more noticeable. Oh look, I finally noticed that I had a strawberry that didn't get painted. Typically you're supposed to put down a base coat first. I guess when I painted this I decided to skip that step and go straight for the sponge to do the highlighting at the same time. Since my sponge was big enough, it turned out okay. I ended up getting red across the entirety of the sponge or the strawberry at one time, so it wasn't too much of an issue. Once my paint is dry, I like to go through with an extra fine, for this particular project I used an extra fine white paint pen, and I'm just adding a little bit of accent lines, giving it a little bit more highlight, and making those strawberries more of an individual strawberry rather than a blob of strawberries. Sometimes we use a thicker paint pen, but those are usually on bigger projects like the gnomes. So for these particular projects with the inserts, I like to use the extra fine. These are a Posca brand paint pen, and we do have them available if you wish to purchase them from us. They're available as an add-on to any of our kits, majority of our kits, I should say. And they should also be available as an individual item if you just need to order one on our website, or we have them in store as well. Once I've finished with the accent lines for the strawberries, I'm going to go ahead and add some accent lines to the leaves, just creating some definition in the leaves. So once they get put behind the strawberries, you can see them a little bit better. Just using my pen to follow a little bit of the curvature of the leaves, giving it a little bit of definition. Once I'm done with the leaves, I'm going to go ahead and add some accent lines to the stems. To the stems, just doing a little bit of curvature lines there on the edges. I don't do every edge, just a couple edges, and I vary them to what I do on each stem so that I don't have too many that look exactly the same. Now that we're done painting all of our pieces and with our accent lines, we're going to go ahead and start assembling. I prefer to use the Gorilla Wood Glue, or Gorilla Super Glue, and I'm just going to add a couple little dots here and there. You can also use wood glue. Just be aware that wood glue takes a little bit longer to set up, so your pieces may move while they're setting. I like the super glue because they set very quickly. I'm just going to be lining up the strawberries to the bottom edge of my leaves, making sure everything is flush down on that bottom edge, and holding down for a couple seconds. Going to add a couple dots to that first strawberry, that edge strawberry, and then add onto that strawberry, making sure all of the edges are flush. It is going to overlay in the front of your basket, and that is okay. The tabs are designed to allow that to happen. So I'm just going to add a couple dots to each of the stems of the strawberries, and then find the ones that match. I highly recommend to do this as a dry fit first to make sure you have the correct pieces on the right spots. But you're just going to make sure that you get the right stems to go on the right pieces, since there's different sizes and then kind of a different orientation. Once you're done attaching all of the stems, you're going to go ahead and place your little blossoms. I just chose, there's a couple of them that have a specific home like that one. Some of them that go on the front of the strawberries don't really have a home, so you can put them wherever you'd like. You can see on the parts of the leaves that there may be like a curved spot that's going to fit the blossom petals. So that's how you know which ones go where on that part of it. For the ones that go in front of the strawberries, you can put them on the stems. You can put them on top of the strawberries. At that point, it comes down to whatever looks good for you. You'll probably want to do another dry fit on them just to make sure you have them in the spots where you want them before you add glue. Once you're done adding your blossoms, you're going to add a couple dots of glue to the top of the signpost, and that's just going to be used to hold on the front of the sign. Make sure all of the edges are flush with each other. So there's a little bit of the signpost that's going to stick out of the top. And then just add a tiny, tiny dab of glue to the backs of your lettering, and you're going to attach them to the front of your sign using those laser lines as guides of where it's supposed to go. Line it up as best as you can, cover up those guidelines. Doing the same thing for Farm and Fresh. Just a couple little dots of the super glue if that's what you're using, that's all you need. Holding down firmly just to make sure everything is stuck where it's supposed to be. Once you're done with all the assembly, you can go ahead and you can stick it into your basket. My basket is the retro version, and it has not been fitted to truly be reversible. Once you have your basket done, you will actually have a piece called a back tab. That back tab is going to get attached to the little jut out tab piece at the bottom of the strawberry section, the leaf section. Then you're just going to add your sign to the back side of the leaves, wherever you want it to be, and hold firmly until it's set in place. But like I said, so you're going to have a little back tab rectangle, and you're going to use some glue and attach that to the little tab that's jutting out from the bottom of the piece that has the leaves on it. That makes it so that your basket is reversible, so you can choose which side of your basket. If you chose to paint it two separate colors, that'll help you choose which side of the basket you want it to go on. I'm here doing some last minute touch up. I had forgotten to paint the seeds with the paint pen onto that last strawberry that I had left. That was just a poor forgotten strawberry through this whole project. But once you're done with that, then everything is done and ready to be put in your basket. Just like so. And that is the video for the strawberries. Be sure to follow along and subscribe to our channel to see more from coming months.